At the end of the presentation, what I'm going to encourage you to do is to ask yourself a question is, what value did I create for myself today by attending this presentation? I am totally not into whether you liked me, whether you liked the content. I am into, are you going to take some responsibility and move forward with some of the content? So the quote that I always like to start out with, and we all know and love and admire George Clooney, right? So to look at the screen, and I'm going to go ahead and read this because sometimes people tune in via audio, and it says, I had to stop going to auditions thinking, oh, I hope they like me. I had to go in thinking I was the answer to their problem. And that is what I'm encouraging you today to really think about, that selling is solving people's problems for a profit. And when we position ourselves as a guide to helping our prospect who is vulnerable in some way, right? Our prospect has a problem, and we are there to guide them through and to help them, give them a plan, call them into action, help them avoid the pitfalls, and to be more successful. And so many salespeople that have the Yielder Call Reluctance, where they just are afraid to be assertive, they don't want to be pushy, and it can be to your detriment. So let's think about what we're doing here today. So a word about relationships. In the book, Hard Truth About Soft Selling by George Dudley, and I've been affiliated with Mr. Dudley for over 20 years, he said you can't depend on relationship building skills alone to make the sale for you. Go ahead and hone those skills and make them work for you, but don't confuse making friends with making sales. When is the last time your company sent you a check for a friendship bonus? Now, you know, and I know, that value-added customer service can be the deciding factor when a prospect chooses you over a competitor. But salespeople can get their wires crossed when they believe that the buyer-seller relationship is more important than the sale. So there must be a balance. In the end, relationships and friendships do not pay the bills. Selling products and services pay the bills. Now, don't get me wrong, relationships are important, but buyers primarily want you to fulfill their needs, their internal need, their external need, and their philosophical need. They want you to give them a plan to relieve their pressures so that they can be successful. They want you to know your product. They want you to care about them. And you care about them by taking action and keeping them moving through your sales process. Trying to gain their approval is misspent efforts. So keep working on yourself, developing your skills, and doing the activity that puts you in front of people, and your confidence will escalate. So here's a question before we start, is can you close a sale without developing rapport? The next question is, can you develop a relationship without closing a sale? And can you strike a balance between those two concepts? And that's what I'm here for you today. So a successful salesperson finds that middle ground. They're very clear in their goals, and they understand that it is okay to sell their services and to meet their production goals. So that is the context of the presentation today. So are you in the right place? I hope so. So let's talk about the agenda. Well, I already gave you the definition for selling. You're solving people's problems for a profit. It's okay. You've worked hard. You've been through a lot of training. Many of you have certifications, etc. And what I promote is when you're prospecting and selling, that you have an outward mindset. of how do you help them get what they want, avoid pressures and pitfalls, and to be more successful. So somebody answered the question there. Thank you much. I'm going to keep an eye on the question. Okay, so let's look at the agenda here. We're going to talk about the Yielder Call Reluctance. So there are 16 types of call reluctance where people are emotionally hesitating, emotionally holding themselves back in their prospecting and selling. And the Yielder Call Reluctance is the number one type and the most costly, where people are more interested, or they're just wired in a way, but guess what? You can rewire yourself to be approval seekers and people pleasers opposed to being the guide that you are supposed to be. Demonstrating credibility, demonstrating competence, having the authority to move them forward, and the assertiveness, and also to have some empathy, so you can express some empathy. So we're going to talk about Yielder Call Reluctance, how that yielder can show up for you, and it can cost you big bucks and a lot of anxiety. And when that fear comes in, what happens is we have an amygdala hijack. I am going to include some neurochemistry here in the program today around what goes on when we are in fear in some way of moving forward instead of moving forward with confidence and optimism and learner mindset. And the way that we really do look at promoting ourselves is to be valuable, vocal, and visible. When you look at the top performers that are extremely well positioned and continue to do well, they know their value, they are vocal, and they are visible. So what do I mean by vocal? So they're communicating with people, they're picking up the phone, they're leaving messages, and they're not hiding behind email. And I'm going to provide some solutions. Do you like it? So I can guarantee that you may feel a little bit uncomfortable today because I am going to get to the cause of what happens when we're not assertive in moving forward. What is causing that? And I've already touched on it because we have our wires crossed. We think it's about being friends and getting the approval of our prospect. And sometimes we have to ask them some questions that make them uncomfortable, right? Now, I highly recommend that everybody on this call buy the book, Building a Successful Client-Driven Program, and it's called Story Brand, Developing Your Story Brand by Donald Miller. And he has this laid out so brilliantly and so easily. So let's think about this here. So you have a prospect, and your prospect is vulnerable in some way. They may be very smart. They may be a high-end attorney. They may be a neurosurgeon. They may be a CEO. They may be somebody that is very capable, right? But they have a problem, and they don't know how to solve it. If they could have solved it, they wouldn't need you. We have a lot of different people on the call in different industries, so I'm not going to give really specifics. I want you to be listening so you can figure this out and link it to how it applies to you, right? So your prospect, they have a problem. They have an external problem. They have an internal problem, or a want, so to speak, and they have a philosophical want that they need you to solve for them. So they meet you. You are the guide. You are not the hero. No, you're not their hero. They're the hero, and you're the guide that has the authority and the empathy that you build the trust in order to give them a plan to solve their problem, and you must call them into action. So salespeople who are too nice to close the deal, they do a good job in many ways, but I coach salespeople and they're not calling the prospect into action. And that's where they back off because they don't know how to do it, they're not comfortable with it, etc. And then you have to help them avoid failure, right? That's what they want. That's what they want from you, and they want to end up in a successful relationship. So salespeople who are too nice to close the deal need to re-identify themselves. You're not their friend. You are a guide, a very important guide that has what it takes to help them achieve their goal. And you're going to learn how to develop trust from them in order to get their to have that relationship. So every once in a while I look at the questions that are coming up, so I just have to be careful. So I'll keep focused on that for now. So this is what we're going to really zero in on today, right? So isn't that awesome? So people that have the Yielder Call Reluctance, they're too nice to close the deal, right? And so when you look at that, they feel the prospect would be offended by their sales effort. And that is what is really detrimental to them. And it is, like I said, it's very common, and it has become more prevalent in sales training programs within organizations that are promoting relationship selling and soft selling skills. So I know some of you are going to have a problem with this, right? But really look at this, because sometimes you can shoot holes in your own boat by not being open to this. So what if you breathe into it and just recognize that it's a balance between the relationship and being the guide in order to help them achieve their goal? So isn't it true that every once in a while you meet a salesperson who may not be as knowledgeable as you, but they are doing better business? They may not even have the experience and be as competent, but they're always getting new business. And they're getting new business because they're assertive and consistent in their prospecting, and they're also closing the business. So how this can be affecting you. Now let's talk about the sales process. You are talking to your prospects about their desired result. So let's just say, and I know we have some insurance salespeople on the line, they want protection for their business and for their family, right? At a deeper level, it just helps them in the desired result. The current reality is maybe they don't have enough coverage, right? And it's going to cost them more to get some coverage. Anytime we're moving our prospect from the current reality, their point A, where there's a lot of confusion, to their desired result, there is going to be some tension. They're not going to be comfortable. They might not like the price. However, they want the desired result. And so people who are too nice to close the deal are uncomfortable when the prospect gets uncomfortable, because the questions that you ask prospects are invaluable to them because they make them uncomfortable, and when people are uncomfortable, they'll make a decision. But if we back off instead of asking questions that are going to make them uncomfortable, how have we served them, right? So it's really having that and noticing now and using our diplomatic skills and the way that we ask questions. There's a real skill of going about that to create that tension so they realize I need to do something now. So the current reality to the desired result. And going back to this presentation today, you may feel some creative tension. You may start squirming a little and say, eek, that's me. But you know what? Identifying something helps you go to the solution. So I hope each and every one of you feel a little bit of that creative tension so you can move into a desired result and serve your clients more, serve your prospects more by being more assertive and not being too nice to close the deal. 70% of the sale is engagement and uncovering needs. So with the prospecting, we've engaged with them, right? And it takes follow-through to get engagement. And so many people foul up in their follow-through. Follow-through is so vital. And when you know your value and you have good systems in place, you will follow through. And then uncovering the need. So that is where most salespeople are not doing a good job. They're uncovering the superficial need, but they're not uncovering that internal need or the philosophical need. That's why you need to get this book by Donald Miller. It's going to help you and go deeper in uncovering that need. So when we look at too nice to close the deal, is that we're fearful. We're afraid if we move forward, that prospect might get angry and upset at us. So it's just us perceiving and coming from thinking that they're going to get angry. How do we know they are, right? And if somebody does get angry, they're just scared. If they're just scared, you just have the empathy to understand and help them develop trust with you so that you can help them achieve their goal. So in the middle of your brain, you have the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is the chemical factory in your brain. Yes, you have a chemical factory in your brain. And whatever thought you are thinking, your hypothalamus is secreting a cascade of hormones that match your thought. When you are coming at your selling through fear of, I don't want to be too pushy, I don't want to be too intrusive, I don't want to upset them, you're coming from fear, and your hypothalamus is pumping out fear hormones, including the major one is cortisol. And so why is it that you have a perception shift, a mindset shift is where the miracle comes, and that you approach your prospecting and selling from a curiosity mindset, from a learner mindset, and from an optimistic mindset? Your hypothalamus is pumping out completely different chemicals that make you feel good and give you confidence. So we all know what that feels like when a prospect said, yes, I'm ready to go forward, right? We all know that. Your body, you're just like basking in the success. Your body is secreting hormones that are the happy hormone. There's oxytocin in there, and you feel good. So the point of my bringing this up is when people are too nice to close the deal, they're interpreting the sales process through fear. And my goal is to help you interpret the sales process through fact and stop bringing fear and the don't wanting to upset somebody or offend somebody into your sales process. I hope that makes sense. I'm happy to take questions, and I am looking here, and I will take a question. What is the name of the book again? Thank you for asking that question. It is Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. And it is, y'all just have to get it, right? Okay, so when we experience fear, we get hijacked by our amygdala. So the hypothalamus secretes the chemicals, and then we get hijacked by amygdala. When we're in amygdala hijack, we have fear, and we fight. We get angry at ourselves. Oftentimes, people are too nice to close the deal, take it out on themselves, punish themselves, or they flee, they run away, they escape. They don't want to look at it. It's too hard. So they try a superficial fix without going to the cause. I'm hitting to the cause today. It's not about approval seeking or people pleasing. It's about you positioning and identifying yourself as a guide that's going to help them. Or freeze. They get into inertia. They get stuck. Or they appease. So that's the yielder. They cope. They acquiesce. When somebody says is not agreeable to set the next appointment with you, what is it you're going to do? You're going to explore it right then and there, you know? And here's where the too nice to close the deal comes in, is where salespeople are not setting up their next appointment when they're in front of the prospect. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. So when we're having an amygdala hijack, Our body is secreting and releasing stress hormones that lead to stress behaviors, which are fight, flee, freeze, or appease. And I want you to identify with yourself differently so that you can have confidence in moving forward, and your confidence is going to breed confidence in your prospects. And guess what? They will trust you and allow you to be the guide that gives them a plan that leads them to success. Is that good? Are we doing good today? You like it? Does that make sense? I'm hoping so. So let's look at a salesperson that is too nice to close the deal versus a confident, assertive salesperson that owns their process. They own the process of sales, the sales process. And if you're too nice to close the deal, guess what? Your prospect is owning your process. Your company probably did not teach you to that, right? So a salesperson that's too nice to close the deal, they qualify people. And then a confident salesperson uncovers the need, the want, the internal, external, and philosophical want of the prospect. A salesperson is too nice to close the deal. I tell you, they talk too much. And somebody that they just talk. They're more comfortable talking than listening. They often assume more instead of questioning. If somebody says something, I call it double clicking. If a prospect says something to you that you really don't understand or it doesn't make sense, that you double click. You go, tell me more about that. What do you mean by that? And the people that are too nice to close the deal, they just assume, they kind of think, that doesn't make sense. But instead of clarifying it and making that transparent, they just assume and move on. Too nice to close the deal, they're seeing they're selling through offering. They're making an offer, right? We all hear that. Or the confident, assertive salesperson who owns their process, they see the process through the problem lens. Your prospect has a problem, and you're the guide. They're the hero in the story, and you're the guide. You like it? That is referenced by focused selling. So where does Yielder Call Reluctance come from? People who are too nice to close the deal, where does it come from? There are personality predispositions. Where, you're just nice people. You're nice people. You grew up in a nice household. Everybody's nice. So there is that to take into consideration. Some of the heredity, and some are exposure to people that have that yielder behavior, and also sales training that is too focused on the relationship instead of owning the process. That kind of sales training exposure can really create a whole company of people who are too nice to close the deal. And they're just not doing well, or as well as they could, right? So what's the difference between an account manager and an account developer? So people that are too nice to close the deal are really good account managers. They're very good at keeping people happy. Sometimes they give away the store, but they're still good managers because they're checking in, right? Or an account developer. So have you been hired and retained to be an account developer or an account manager? And if it's an account developer, it's really looking at this behavior so that you can own your process and it will organically unfold for you. I promise you. I know. I like it. Okay, so let's talk about the solution here. So if you go, yeah, Connie, I really do. I can feel that I am a little bit not as assertive enough, and yeah, so I need to be more aware of this. And so here's a question to you, are you afraid that you'll appear too pushy or intrusive? That's where you become aware of, yes, I have this too nice to close the deal. Are you afraid to bother people who are busy or to interrupt the otherwise engaged? or to disturb the indisposed. So if we're too busy, if we're afraid that we're going to interrupt somebody, guess what? You are going to interrupt them, but they have a problem you can solve for them, right? Are you sociable, but you're not necessarily outgoing? And are you building a number of relationships, but you're not meeting your production goals? That's an indication that this is something for you to look at. Are you paying for lunches, dinners, and golf games, but you're not breaking even? I coached an individual that would arrange golf games for prospects, and he would never get around to talking about business or uncovering. And he said, I'd get so mad at myself, I'd be throwing my golf clubs in the back of the trunk, and I didn't get around to business, and I didn't ask them about, some uncovering need questions, and I didn't follow through, right? And so that's where we get a little bit upset for ourselves. So here's where for you to just be acutely aware of your behavior. So we always have to be aware. There's an assessment, a free assessment, if anybody want to email me, or there's an assessment that has a financial investment that can help you identify this too. So then, once you become aware of it, you need to assess it. So there is a way that you can assess it, and there's a way that you can personally I'm going back, that you can be aware of it and assess it, but even assessing yourself in looking at after a sales call, how did you do? And record your calls. I'm a big believer. I have clients that actually simulate situations, videotape, audio tape people, and so that you can personally see yourself and experience yourself when you are yielding. And a good assessment there is after a sales call to be able to say, what did I do well? Right? And I showed up, I did this, it's it, I asked some qualifying questions, right? What would I do differently next time? And what would I never do again? And what did I learn? So there's a way that you can start assessing yourself. Now, admitting that you have this people-pleasing, approval-seeking behavior, that you're too nice to close the deal, is I'm going to give you an assignment that because this behavior is, I'm guessing, is causing you big bucks and you're frustrated, right? And it also costs you self-esteem and confidence. So here's an exercise to write it down. So I want you to look up in the dictionary the words aggressive, assertive, and passive. Then, with a real scenario in your day-to-day business, write out how an aggressive salesperson would handle a situation. Write down how an assertive salesperson would handle it and how a passive salesperson would handle it. So people that are too nice to close the deal actually believe that assertive behavior is aggressive. So their compass on assertive and aggressive is off. So a major key to your success is to distinguish between aggressive, assertive, and passive. And you can always start out with, I'm curious. I'm curious how open you would be to set an appointment so we can follow through. It's going to be in your best interest, something like that. Have more than that. And then also look up the words like and respect. What is the difference between being liked and being respected? Would you rather be respected or liked? Have you ever done business with a professional who you respected but you didn't really like? And there might be yes, and if you have a lot of options to go to a competitor, you would probably go to somebody else, right? So you want to have that charisma and the empathy and the caring for people where you express some empathy for them and also demonstrate your authority, but also there is that delicate balance, right? And notice when you do not follow your own process and you let prospects control the process. When you walk away with getting a firm commitment, you will not like yourself. You will be so frustrated because now you're chasing somebody, right? So, and then apply some proven techniques. And so that is what I'm sharing with you today, that really look at that. So we'll go a little bit deeper into that. So become aware when you are yielding. When you find yourself, just observe yourself without getting angry with yourself. Just notice, because you can learn how to self-correct. And when you do some of the exercises that I am sharing here. So then, this is how the "you nice to close the deal" shows up on the call, where you're not assertive in making recommendations or asking for the business. Remember, they want you to guide them. They want you to be competent. They want your recommendations. That's what you're here for. So assertive in making recommendations, and sometimes those recommendations are going to make them uncomfortable, but that's okay. You're serving them. Leaving appointments without getting a firm commitment for the next step. Too nice to close the deal. You have to figure out some verbiage that you set that up as why is it important to them. And if anybody has a challenge there, you can email me and I'll give you some scripting there, and that you hold firm on that. It is so important. And I know you know. Where also they're too nice to close the deal, have unanswered questions that they were afraid to ask. Wow. Your right questions are invaluable to your prospect, because guess what? They get to hear their response. When it comes out of your mouth, they doubt it. When it comes out of their mouth, it's true. And so that goes back to where you being assertive enough to double click. You know what do you mean by that? That you just go deeper, deeper, deeper from a superficial answer that they may give you, and having that wherewithal and creating a space so they trust that they will come up with some answers, and it's going to lead them to the solution you're providing, right? People are too nice to close the deal, string out closing the sale. They're just waiting for the right time. You need to know how you're going to close the sale. I mean, I say I take MasterCard, Visa, Amex, or a check. What's going to work for you? What is our next step? Let's get started. Pulling out a contract, whatever it is, but that really recognize that there's a place and a time, and that you just get comfortable and role play when it's time to move forward and close the sale. Too nice to close the deal. Go off on irrelevant rapport building and time-consuming tangents. It's important to have some relationship building up front that is in their best interest. And have a little bit of that conversation that's okay, but not too much. Salespeople with too nice to close the deal are excessively friendly or folksy, because they don't want to sound pushy or close-oriented. Chit-chat, they dance up to the close, and then they hope that the prospect says, let's move forward, right? So it's having those exact words, role-playing them, so you can move forward. Does not take control of the call. Oh my goodness, you own your process, my friends. And if you're not taking control of the call and they're taking control of the call, I'm working with an organization right now that sell to physicians. Physicians are extremely important. They're extremely busy, right? But they still don't know what they don't know, or they know that they don't know, and they're looking for a guide to help them, right? So take control of the call. Yes. And having pattern interrupts planned out when you're prospecting. So we all have heard it. Have y'all heard, I'm not interested? What is your pattern interrupt? because everybody has that pattern interrupt that's just automatically, I'm not interested. But to be able to interrupt that pattern where you acknowledge, I see, and then you interrupt their pattern of I'm not interested and ask them a question. So what are you experiencing with your financial plan? What are you experiencing with your returns? What are you experiencing with your CRM system? Whatever it is that you're selling, but to have some pattern interrupts on the ways that when you're prospecting, that you are getting certain objections, which some people call right up front. Work them out. I coach people, and we customize a place to work out so you can interrupt their pattern so you can move forward instead of saying, oh, okay, goodbye, right? So admission, you're a work in progress. Be gentle with yourself, where I really want you to look at, don't go inward and punish yourself and get upset at yourself because you have the too nice to close the deal call reluctance, because you can overcome it. I know people have, and I have worked people through this, and their confidence escalates, and you're still a very diplomatic, likable person, and now you have the confidence and the charisma that goes together, and you know why you're really out there is solving people's problems for a profit. You have a plan for them. You are the guy that is expressing empathy for them, and you have the competence and authority to do this. Yes? The book, The Sales Call Reluctance, is an extremely good book. It is a textbook, and you can read in there. It's very potent. It can be offensive to some people. It used to be offensive because they take it hit too close to home. But when you can get that this behavior is costing you big bucks, and it's costing you from helping people achieve their goals, and it is costing your self-esteem and your confidence, you can do something about it. So that book is also on Amazon. So get the Building a Story Brand and the Psychology of Sales Call Reluctance. So we can make this simpler, but what would only complicate matters. So I have given you a simple approach to this today. It's not superficial. It is deep. And it's looking at what is causing you to be too nice to close the deal, where we go deeper, 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 get to the cause, coach to the cause, so you can identify yourself in a way that positions you to be valuable to other people. So you can care deeply for others. You can want the best for others. You also want the best for you. You want to care deeply for you, to take a look at this behavior so that you can move forward with confidence. So this is where thought realignment comes in, where you're going to re-identify yourself from coming at this the way that too nice to close the deal, to coming at this and thinking about yourself differently. What is the problem I solve? How am I going to position myself as the empathetic authority that is totally balanced so that I take the right action, so that I get the follow-up appointment, so I do those pattern interrupts, so I ask for the business. So realigning yourself and re-identifying yourself where it becomes a belief of yours that you are valuable, and also your mindset is coming through as a learner mindset, a curious mindset, versus a fearful mindset. So you're going to interpret through fact. If somebody says, I don't want to talk to you, you just interpret it through fact. That's all it is. They said they don't want to talk to me. Don't make up a story that throws you into a self-doubt spiral and makes you miserable. So it's truly leading yourself through re-identifying yourself, right? I like it. It's so fun. So whatever you are thinking causes you to feel in a particular way, which alters what you do. And that's what we're looking at here. And so for some reason, my slide is not, it was with just a little bit of time delay. Okay, so your inner dialogue change is so important, where people are saying that I'm frustrated because I'm not meeting my goals. I'm experiencing frustration. And I don't want you to identify, I'm one of those salespeople who are too nice to close the deal. I experience a fear that causes me to be too nice to close the deal. So I am experiencing frustration. However, frustration is not who I am. You don't want to identify with the emotionality of being frustrated with yourself, right? And so this goes back to being gentle. So somebody said, I'm exhausted. I'm experiencing exhaustion. It really is more emotionally intelligence. That right there, you're monitoring that. Your confidence and your emotional intelligence will increase when you do that. I'm afraid of being too pushy. I'm experiencing fear when it comes to asking for a committed next step. Fear is not who I am, right? So we look at what is the cause of being too nice to close the deal is fear. What is causing the fear is your particular perception or interpretation, right? And so how can you change that and identify with that differently? Role play is so important. And the more that you role play with people, where you find a motivated, goal-oriented person who will role play case scenarios with you, it's fun. And you'll find someone who will courageously throw you curveballs. Record your role plays and analyze them just as you would a phone call. So analyzing your behavior so you don't relapse is to really look at that and make a note of what makes you speechless. I know, I've had it. I've been selling for years and years and years, and every once in a while, it's speechless. I get speechless. I go, that's a good question. And then you kind of think about it. But role play those things that trip you up and cause you and fear, and then you can move forward with tremendous confidence when you do the role plays. So here's my email and my contact information. I do the sales coaching. I do an assessment for salespeople. It's kind of like your prospecting EKG, and we can really look at that. And also, if there's anything I mentioned today, any questions that you have, or if you want some help on a pattern interrupt or anything like that, you can reach out to me, and I'll be happy to help you. So, are there any questions or comments that I am seeing here? I am totally open for questions right now in moving forward. So I am not seeing any questions here. So I am going to, again, encourage you to really take a look at this. Dare to go deeper. Dare yourself. Your confidence will escalate as you come out of this. And also, please remember to come back to this Sales Experts channel. And if any of you are having challenges in any area, voicemail, prospecting, I did a prospecting class earlier this year, and we can move from there. So as you evaluate this program today, please evaluate it from what is one thing that I learned that is going to create value for me in moving forward, that you really look at that. And feel free to give feedback from the audience and take some responsibility as you move forward and just say, you know what? The value I'm going to create is I'm just going to be more aware. I'm going to be more aware, and I'm one thing about it, right? And so create value, create the responsibility for yourself in moving forward. So with that said, I'm seeing one question here. Oh, so I'm getting some compliments and it was good stuff. So very helpful. Make sure What is your desired result question for customers, since that's the question we need to ask ourselves? Well, what you're doing is, yes, I guess that was just a comment here. Open my eyes. I enjoyed your presentation. Open my eyes. Excellent. And just ask people, what is important to you in this regard? What is important? And really state what is important to them. Ask questions that are predicated on their last answer. That's how you tell a real sales pro, is they find out what's important to the prospect and continue down that road. What is the question that you can ask that's predicated on the last answer, so you don't go all overboard? So I appreciate that too. So thank you for your compliments, and I wish you a very, very successful career in moving forward, and that your confidence breeds confidence in your prospects. So thanks again. Good day.